Good morning. Let's talk about energy for the next 15 minutes. The population growth in the world and the fact that the standard of living continues to increase has been fueling the demand for energy for a long time, and it will continue to do so also in the future. On this screen here you see where actually electricity in the world is currently used. You can see that significant parts of the world are still actually without electricity. But this does not come without significant challenges. You are all aware of the Paris Agreement, where we set a pretty ambitious 2 degrees ceiling or a goal for global warming. That's one thing. But the other thing is that the population growth and the continuous need for energy is also increasing continuously the use of natural resources, and we are clearly overspending, we are overusing what this planet Earth is able to produce. This is a massive and a growing problem that we all need to take extremely seriously. One thing that is fueling this growth is demand for, or is actually accelerating both the growth and the challenge, is the growing demand for electricity. Electricity is kind of the blood and the fuel that everything is based on in our modern society. And the growth for the need of electricity is of course fueled by urbanization. More and more people are living in cities. When standard of living is increasing, we are using more and more gadgets, and everything this is driving, all this is driving the consumption of electricity to pretty high levels. We expect that from already high levels today, we will actually at least double the total world electricity consumption in the next 20 years or so. At the same time, the urbanization is leading to a situation where we will have a growing number of mega cities in the world, tens of new mega cities being created with more than 10 million people, most of these in different parts of Asia, where actually a significant issue will be that how all these people will be able to deal with all the waste they are producing. The amount of waste in the world that our society is producing is expected to approximately double between the years 2015 and 2025. In just 10 years, we double the amount of waste that we create. Another thing that is fueling this demand, which is actually for many technology freaks in the audience is a pretty exciting thing, is all these talks that we've been listening to for a long time about IoT, industrial internet, digital connectivity, and so on. And the fact that the number of connected devices in the future will be massive, according to some estimates, maybe even 1 trillion connected devices in the year 2030. That means several things, but for the electricity and the world that is concerned about resources and energy in general, this is at the same time an exciting challenge, but also an issue, because these devices that are connected not only use electricity, but they are connected to a growing number of massive data centers that are crunching all this data that they are producing. And already today, would you imagine that already in today's world, the amount of electricity that all the data centers are using in the world is, if I say you the number, it doesn't tell most people much if you are not working in this business, it's about 400 terawatt hours. But if I put that into perspective and say that the entire electricity consumption in the United Kingdom is approximately 360 terawatt hours per year. So already today, all data centers, all these server farms in the world use more electricity than the entire population of the United Kingdom, including all the industrial use of the British companies. The same is also true to the Nordic region. The electricity consumption in the Nordic region, all Nordic countries together, is about 400 terawatt hours. And now this is what the data centers today are using, and this amount is expected to potentially triple in the next 10 years. This is a massive increase in electricity consumption. Then I will, in a second, come back to the other side of this, which is then the very exciting opportunity for many startups that all these devices will actually bring along. Because I'm going to suggest that when we talk about the goal that we set in Paris, the famous 2-degree goal, it's a challenge that is not even close to being solved yet. It's a good intention. There's a lot of nice plans in different parts of the world, but everything that will be needed to solve this challenge has not yet been invented. And this is why we are here, and this is why we want to work with the startup community, because we need your brains to solve this challenge. International Energy Association is estimating that the world will need to invest approximately 16,500 billion US dollars into the energy system if we want to reach this 2-degree goal. 16.5 trillion US dollars. Where will that money come from? At least it will not come from government budgets, because most governments in the world today, they are actually quite poor. At least they are battling with significant fiscal problems. So we can't assume that this money would come from government budgets. This has to come from private capital. It has to come from different types of combinations that the startup community and the venture capital industry and the large established corporations like Fortum are putting together into new innovation. And once again, everything that will be needed has not yet been invented. Today, about 2/3 of all emissions in the world, CO2 emissions, are directly or indirectly coming from energy, from either the production of energy or the use of energy, like in cars, for example. 2/3 is related to the energy, which means that also the solution needs to come one way or another from energy. If we talk about electricity specifically, which is the most important thing here, still today, about 2/3 of the electricity production, electricity generation in the world is based on fossil fuels. We here in the Nordic region often get complacent about this, because the fact is that up here, almost all our electricity production today is CO2 free. But that is not the case in the world. The most disturbing and the biggest problem is clearly coal. 41% of world's electricity production is today based on coal-fired power plants. And they obviously are the biggest sources of emission when we talk about electricity generation. Then there are other very big sources, as well as the traffic, for example. So we are talking about really significant challenges here where we are going to need your help. There is a disruption in the energy system already ongoing, but I don't think it's going fast enough. What is this disruption? First of all, we are building a lot of solar and wind capacity in the world today. Today, it's still a fairly small part of all global electricity generation. I think it's not much more than 5% of the world's electricity today is created with solar or wind. Unfortunately, and this is the technology optimist part of me, fortunately, the cost of these technologies has really dropped a lot. The cost of solar power has dropped roughly 80% in 5 years. And hopefully we will get even more innovations in there, which will make it drop even faster. We actually, Fortum today announced an investment in a startup which has developed a very promising next generation solar technology material that can be printed directly on different types of surfaces very efficiently. So we need more information like this, but we have already achieved a lot. 80% in 5 years is not a bad achievement. The cost of wind has also dropped, but there is one big issue with this whole thing with wind and solar. They are all weather dependent. And unless we connect these innovations with completely new types of innovations in energy storage, this will never be the total solution, because the sun does not always shine and the wind does not always blow. And the fundamental rule of physics in electricity says that production, generation and consumption must be the same every single second. That comes from the laws of physics. So what we need to develop is different types of intermediate storage, kind of virtual generation facilities there in between. Already, now there are estimates that 2030 to 40, maybe even 30 to 40% of world's energy electricity could come from wind and solar. But that already starts to be a level that starts to create significant system challenges because of the volatility. All of a sudden the wind stops blowing or the sun stops shining. And that creates really, really significant technical challenges into the stability of the whole electricity system. And also here we are going to need new innovation. That how are we going to do next generation demand supply balancing in a new world where a larger share of electricity production is fast changing and fast moving as a result of the weather. So a lot of new innovation is needed. There is a disruption ongoing already today, but there is still huge remaining potential for new innovation. Digitalization obviously is one key here. I mentioned earlier the estimate that in 2030 there would be 1 trillion connected devices in the world. Well, one thing that is, of course, common to all these devices is that they all use electricity. But there is a bigger thing behind that, and that is that in the old world of electricity, and still to some extent today, it has been one directional pipe from large power plants all the way to the passive consumers and passive devices that have just been receiving electricity without that much intelligence. Now, the fact that these 1 trillion devices will be connected over the internet will mean that all these devices that use electricity will be intelligent nodes in the future electricity system. They will not be only passive receivers of electricity. They will be intelligent nodes that can be used for many purposes. I give you one example. If we have an application that when there is a peak demand in the system and there is a need to save electricity, and this potential to save has value, if there is a solution that automatically tells all devices of a particular type that now for the next 15 minutes you need to tune down your consumption, all of a sudden you have created a virtual power plant that may be able to replace a coal power plant somewhere else. If 1 million consumers switch down their electricity use, even by turn down it by 5% for 30 minutes, we have potentially replaced several CO2 emitting fossil coal-fired power plants. This just shows how enormous the potential is through new technology when we get all these 1 trillion devices in the future being a contributing and intelligent part of the energy system. So we need your help in this. We have decided, in addition to all the kind of the traditional things that we do, we have decided to invest in the next 3 to 4 years between 100 and 200 million euros in the most promising energy ventures. I mentioned one example today, the investment that we published. But this is why we're here today. We have actually a team of 40 scouts from Fortum that are working and browsing through Slush They are in orange hoodies so that you can recognize them. And they have already about 200 pre-agreed preset meetings to discuss what we and startups could do together. So we really want you to join us in this race. Please go to fortum.com/ventures and see what there is, and let you know if you are interested to work with us and join the change for a cleaner world. Thank you very much.